And welcome everybody to another episode of the Most Important Conversations. I'm here with co-host September Dohrmann, and today we are talking about, I don't know how you want to frame it, September, or we are talking about feeling fragmented, feeling broken, this sensation that people have that they're not whole and complete.
Yeah.
Right? So share a little bit about this and what made you feel like this was a good topic for us to talk about today.
I've been finding it to be a pretty common theme in working with my clients in terms of what they're wanting to. Most people come to me because there's a lot of inner noise in them and they just want some peace in their life. And one of the consistent things that shows up is this feeling that they're broken. I feel so broken. And I'll always propose a different word in that space because broken conveys this feeling of permanence, that I am broken and not fixable. When we look at it through a different lens of, say, use the word such as fragmented, that there's a part of you that was separated from who you truly are, and that part is running the show. I also look through the lens of internal family systems, which is a psychotherapy model that is used. And basically it says that there's many parts to ourselves. And we even say it in conversation. You know, you'll be talking to someone, you go, oh, well, there's a part of me that feels like this is a great idea. But then there's another part of me that thinks this is a really bad idea. And what we're describing when we say that is that we really are leaning into and feeling the different parts of ourselves. One part could be a people pleaser. We were talking about people pleasing and kind of what comes from that and how it's communicated and how it's expressed. Another part of you could remain small, that you feel like in order to feel safe, I have to be small here. I can't express my full self because I will be criticized or I'll be diminished or I'll be judged. And so we tend to keep that part of ourself very small. So in the terms of having a conversation around this idea of feeling broken, I found that when we put on a different layer, not the word broken, but something like fragmentation, I feel fragmented, that it softens the edges around how we feel about ourselves so that it creates just a little bit of space for us to begin to heal, to have some compassion for ourselves, to have some empathy about what we're experiencing and what we're going through and what we have been through that we really haven't reconciled or we haven't been able to properly have a different understanding of various situations in growing up, that we have a misunderstanding of various situations, especially as children. You know, when we're kids, we look at adults differently than when we become an adult. When we become an adult, we have a different understanding of people and of ourselves. But as children, we take in these experiences and they lock into our brain, and those parts of ourselves, those moments kind of freeze in time and say, when a situation looks like this is how I need to behave in order to stay safe. And so they stay frozen there until we give them attention, and they're reparented is another word that is used. You'll hear integration for a way to describe that process. So there's a couple different ways that it's described on how to mend that piece, how to bring that piece back into the core self so that you're operating as a whole, aligned person and not having this feeling or sensation that I am broken, I'm not whole, something is off about me, what is wrong with me? That's another cue to indicate that you're feeling off, that you feel misaligned in some way with yourself.
Yeah. So, the nature of human beings is that we're social creatures. And so we always are going to bend and contort and even break and repress parts of ourself to fit into the group dynamics. We simultaneously are in this weird experience as human beings of wanting to be whole and complete, unique individuals. And yet there is a very defined context that we need to adapt ourselves to in order to be accepted by the group. We are looking, groupthink. This is the sort of thing behind groupthink. And you can see this playing out throughout all of society. And when you exist in a scenario for a long period of time where you are sacrificing parts of your whole and complete self in order to fit in, it's going to occur to you as I'm broken, that there's something off, because there is something off. You're probably adopting behaviors, beliefs, ideas that may not be your own, and you're trying to retrofit them to align with you, but they don't. It's like trying to, the proverbial, square peg in a round hole kind of situation. It kind of mostly could fit, maybe, but there's still something off. And when we do this over and over again throughout our life, because the pull for us to be accepted by the group and to fit in is just so strong. I mean, listen, exile and prison is a punishment for a reason, because it is directly targeting the communal social part of the human. It's saying you don't get to be part of a group, right? When we're in kindergarten, it's go to the corner. When you're an adult, it's you're going to San Quentin, right? But I mean, it's all kind of the same idea at the source of it. So that's a punishment because we're naturally inclined to be in community with one another. Now, wouldn't it be great to be able to be in community without having to sacrifice your whole and complete aligned self at the same time? That's a very unique type of community, which requires everyone to have a high level of awareness, a high capacity to be able to create space for people to show up as they are without judgment and without requiring them to contort themselves into being a different person. And I just want to say that's the nature of the community that we are creating with TMIC, is a community where you not only can show up as your whole and complete self, so you don't have to be a fragmented, quote unquote, broken version of yourself, and we can learn together how to continue to evolve and to adapt ourselves into an emergent type of community where everyone can feel liberated enough to be self-expressed without having to cut parts of themselves off. So I just wanted to kind of plug what we're doing around that, because that is possible. We in society have just never made it possible, because one of the nasty things that gets in the way when communities start to emerge is power dynamics. This is the politics of the whole thing, where certain people position themselves. We don't have, most times, we don't have leaders that are egalitarian in nature, leaders that aren't trying to assert their own will, but are rather holding space to create a container for everyone to be whole, complete, and fully self-expressed as liberated people. It would require a leadership body that would come from that level of intentionality. And what usually happens in our communities is certain people use the fact that they are in positions of power to enrich or ingratiate themselves, to have more than anyone else, and to make others bend to their will. That's what we have as a structure. It's important to understand the systems and structure that are under what you're talking about, because it's those sort of invisible systems and structures for how we organize ourselves as communities, what the expectations are for people to be able to participate in those communities, and how then they have to fragment and bend themselves and contort themselves in order to not be exiled.
Well, I hear you're saying it from an external standpoint of the world around us and the communities and relationships around us. And I would say that happens internally as well.
Sure.
That there are parts of ourselves that we try to exile. We try to silence them, to quiet them down, to make them go away. But they're there to serve you. And going back into what you're talking about, a community and how what we're creating with TMIC, not everybody comes in feeling whole.
No.
It's the nature of the community that holds space for people to evolve into their wholeness of who they really are. But it's a journey, and it's certainly a process. And so through the ontology, you and I have a different approach in how we help someone move into the space of feeling whole. And I'm curious to hear what that journey looks like for you, and when you're working with your clients around this, bringing the sense of wholeness into their life, into their journey. You have a different approach than I do. What's that about?
I don't know what the different approach is specifically, but we can talk about it. I mean, my whole approach to helping people become whole and complete is helping them to access a state of liberation. A state of liberation is a state where the only thing that is important is the level of your aliveness. And aliveness is what we experience when we are in the present moment and we can bring our whole and complete self to that moment. It's when we whole and completely meet the moment of the present moment. Then we experience aliveness. Now, most people, as you just said, are not joining communities from a place of whole and completeness because they already learned at a very young age to fragment parts of themselves off that there was no external approval for. And as a result, there then became a learned condition of no internal approval for those things. So part of the liberation work is for them to start to open to those parts of themselves where it could have been decades earlier, had no approval for those parts of themselves. They were told, if you want to fit into this community, you got to stop that. You got to don't act like that. Don't think like that, and so they started to shut parts of themselves down. And then you're left with, I feel fragmented. I feel broken. I feel incomplete. Of course, because there are parts of you that you've cut off in order to fit in. So of course, they're going to have this experience. So the liberation work that I do begins with giving people permission and approval to freely bring those parts of themselves that they've abandoned and that are probably underdeveloped as a result of it because they've never had any practice doing anything with them, into the body of liberation work where they can start to integrate those things into who they are and start to feel what it feels like, and it'll feel weird. And it often does for people. They feel weird when I've never been allowed to do this or think like this or say this or, and you give them permission. And, so you can see, I know you've seen inside of the whole life architecture work, how over time people start, it's kind of like, I'm just getting this metaphor in my head right now. It's like we send parts of when we're young, it's like we send parts of ourself to the proverbial bedroom. It's like, go to your room. You never come out, right? So there's parts of ourself that we exile within ourselves to rooms inside of ourselves. And those, now they're very, underdeveloped parts of ourselves because we have shunned them for years. And in the liberation work, I'm effectively metaphorically saying, go open all of the doors in the house where you have hidden parts of yourself for decades and tell them it's safe to come out, And then it's like, imagine if you're the part, I imagine a child, like suddenly the doors open and they're told you can come out and join the rest of the party now. And it's like, shit, I've been in here for 21 years. I don't even know what it's like out there anymore. Right. And it's kind of like the kids sort of peeking around the corner and, so it's a slow integration, as you said earlier, integration where people start to re-experience parts of themselves. And the more parts of themselves that they gain approval for and invite back into their whole and complete expression, the more aliveness they feel. Because you're now not walking around with these fragmented parts. You're feeling yourself whole and complete. And what that does is it creates more sense of self-trust, more sense of confidence. And, it's tragic when you think about it, because when we're kids, we have no life experience. And so the conditioning of our friends, family, community, just to fit in, we will exile so many important parts of ourselves. And we wouldn't do it if we were told to as an adult. But as children, we're so dependent on everyone that it's like, whatever it takes, just keep feeding me and put a roof over my head. I'll do whatever it takes. So it's just kind of tragic. With my kids, for example, I create space and always have for them to show up it as their naturalness, whatever that is. And I look at my role as more of a guide than an authoritarian. You must kind of be this way, Anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your approach around. I know your word is liberation. My word is clarity. And so that brings a different process that, yes, we do identify those selves, but I like to go for me and my style, and the style that my clients like, because it's working for them. It's worked for me. Any style will work. The key is to find the one that resonates with you.
Yeah.
So, I could do work with Chad, but it may not hit right because I need something different. But you've got to be able to listen to how your body's communicating with you around the methodology of becoming whole, the strategy of doing that. And so for me, I really want to process the emotion. I want to process that moment in time. And so I want to go back to that moment, see the scene as I recall it, really get in touch with that part of me in that moment. I know exactly how a 12-year-old little girl feels when they're going through something very traumatizing. I
Mhm.
know it because I was her. So
Mhm.
as an adult, I can go to her and have a conversation with her. She has things that she wants to say,
Mhm.
things that I didn't hear, things that
Mhm.
were not allowed to be said. And I create the space for that part of me to communicate. I create that space. My clients create that space for those parts to communicate with them. What do you know to be true about yourself at this age?
Mhm.
What did you need to hear in that moment? And the very first time I ever felt like I loved myself, because that was a question I started wondering in the mid 90s. I was asking, what does it actually mean to love yourself? Like it
Mm.
sounds very cliche. I don't understand what it means. Like, is that a thing? How do you do that? Is it
Mhm.
what you wear? Is it how you dress? I had no clue what that was. And it wasn't until I did this integration work that when I would go back to the different parts of myself, I would tell them how proud I am of them. And I genuinely was in awe of like, holy cow, at such a young age, you were awfully strong and powerful
Mm.
and very
Mhm.
clever in how you protected yourself. And I'm amazed by you. And I appreciate you protecting us this long. And thank you.
Mhm.
And I love you. And I kind of caught me off guard of like, did I just say that I loved myself?
Mm.
And it was the first time I really truly felt it because
Mm.
I had an appreciation for what I have gone through and how I overcame it and how I did it all on my own with my own strategies. Right or wrong doesn't matter. What
Mhm.
mattered is that I survived it and I got to
Mhm.
this side of life of where I am now. And then
Mhm.
going in there and rewriting that program. I've taken my own healing journey a step further in addition to going into those moments to integrate, to bring that piece of me home. Like you said, inviting them back into the party, like you can join the party now. Then
Mhm.
I go past that moment and I look at the potential of what could have been. That
Mhm.
if I was not traumatized at that age, who would I have been? And I would
Mhm.
say I was very outgoing at that time, but I hid it a lot too
Mhm.
because I didn't feel safe being me at that age.
Yeah.
And so I go past the trauma and I go, what was my potential? And I'm living out those moments kind of like in a meditative state where I'm allowing the imagination to unfold to say, oh, I would have so many friends and I would have done this and then my life would have played out that way. I would have felt this way about myself. I would have been so confident to say what's on my mind. And I'm playing out those things. And what's wild, I've had this experience myself, and now I'm having my clients calling me and telling me the same thing. Like I'm changing without putting any effort into it. My vocabulary is changing without me intentionally saying, oh, I need to say things better. I need to do things better. I need to show up. But you don't have any of that stuff. You just naturally do it. What it makes me think of is that time is not linear. Time
Mhm.
doesn't really exist. All realities are happening at the same time. The reality of us being 12 years old is still a reality that's in existence.
Mhm.
And so we can go back and rewrite the story. And it has this effect of affecting the now moment that you're when you go back in time and rewrite or integrate something from the past, it's like that healed version of you catches up to who you are within days, within
Mhm.
hours, within overnight. Sometimes it feels that way when you do this kind of work.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. And this whole like, I should be better, or I should be this, or I should that, all of that stuff goes away. You don't have
Mhm.
any of that internal chatter of what you
Mhm.
should have done or constantly questioning yourself because you know that the decisions and the choices that you're making are coming from your true aligned self. There's no doubt around that. Even
Right.
when people around you are doubting it, like, that's crazy. You shouldn't be doing this. Your inside's going, I don't care what you say. I know this is true for me.
Yeah. 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 No, absolutely. It's really the power of just awareness and acknowledging that these are parts of yourself that are true for you. Just see, or even the awareness or acknowledgement that there are parts that you've learned to be that are out of alignment. I find that that can often do 80 or 90% of the work. Just
Yes,
the
agreed.
acknowledgement and the awareness of it.
Yes.
But it sounds easy, but it's actually quite hard because remember, our ego wants to defend us against any change, and any change, even if the change is, objectively good for us. Like in this case, integrating parts of myself that I've had no approval for is going to be objectively good for me because it's making me whole and complete. But the ego says, wait a minute, you've been doing this for years. You've learned how to make this work. You've done a great job tolerating this. Why invite this uncertainty into the mix, right? And so our ego will defend us, it thinks, the identity that we built around ourselves. We become very attached to. It's sort of the classic, it's the devil you know. So to admit that you have these beliefs or you have this side to yourself or whatever, to admit it and to not only have awareness of it, but even to accept and approve of it can seem highly risky. And so this is why you see people resisting this work oftentimes. When we start whole life architecture every year, we have 2/3 more people at the beginning of the year than end up sticking with us through the end. And it's not because the content and the experience of whole life architecture is a bad one. It's because it's so confronting. And the egos of these people are just not ready to approve of their whole and complete self yet. And so they shut down. And that's when they usually leave. And there's nothing we can do about it. We don't try to keep them because this is not about, this is about helping people journey when they're finally ready to dig in. And you know what? With artificial intelligence and the impact that it's having on our economy, there are going to be so many fragmented egos whose whole identity has been shielded by the human doingness part of their life. Like they've gotten really good at being circus animals for the economic circus we've created. You know what I mean? Like they're really good at doing their thing. Like I think of a circus animal, like just keep doing the backflips, just keep doing the backflips, right? And you got really good at doing the backflips, but you don't want to do the frickin' backflips. Like it's not who you were. You were just doing it because you were getting, very Pavlovian, we were getting treats, and our treats were called paychecks.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, I'll just keep doing the backflips. Just keep paying me. And I saw this article in the Washington Post this morning that I was sharing with you earlier when we were talking. And the article is titled, "Bosses Want You to Know AI is Coming for Your Job." Mm-hmm. And so why would your boss want you to know AI is coming for your job? So that they can grind you down even more and get you to do even more backflips for the same amount of payoff. And so the human doing economy that we've created, which has allowed people to create false identities around their human doing without having to integrate their whole and complete actual self, is about to come crashing down. And it's already starting. And so there are going to be people, many, many millions of people, who are going to be faced with, I either confront my true self and I create approval for it so that I can integrate myself as a whole and complete person. And from there, I can create a new life. I can create a new business. I can create new possibilities. That's the work that's going to be needed for these folks, because it's the human doing, the trained human doing who's been doing backflips because of AI is not going to be able to go up the street and find another company willing to pay them for backflips, because the company's going to be like, nah, we got that handled now. So now you got to face yourself. There's just no way around it.
Well, I would say the fear around that is an opportunity or an invitation to learn how to alchemize it. Who
Yep.
are you? What do you really want in life? And I mean, there are personalities and individuals that they don't want to be a business owner. They don't want to be an entrepreneur. They actually want to work for somebody.
Sure. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
If
absolutely
that's
nothing
true
wrong
for
with
them.
that. If it's true, that's exactly right. If it's true. But I've also seen a lot of people who are stuck in that 9 to 5 because they think they've got security there and are afraid to step out on their own, even though their soul is calling for them to step out and do something on their own. You want to be a business owner. Just do it. Just jump in and do it. You just have to take the jump. It's not always easy. It's definitely not an easy path. Even my heart, I think I've said this a few times, even my hardest day as a business owner and an entrepreneur, my hardest day, I would not trade that for a 9 to 5 ever. Not ever. To take my freedom from me, that I'm not dependent on anybody but myself to generate what I want for myself. I'm not allowing my destiny to be in somebody else's hands. My quality of life, that's what more accurately said, is that the
Mm-hmm.
quality of my life is left into somebody's hands. And so if there's fear around that or discomfort around the steps that individuals will need to be taking in this new market, in this new AI world that we're stepping into, because it's only going to grow. But
Mm-hmm.
if there's fear or discomfort, that's an invitation. Look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Ask it, what does it know? What does it need to say? What is it holding on to?
Mm-hmm.
And pay attention to your body. What is your body communicating? Where are you
That's right.
holding that energy? We talk about illness as dis-ease. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's disease. That's what it is. It's a dis-ease in the body. So
Mm-hmm.
what is uneasy about your life? What is uneasy about your past? Like, get curious about that. Don't cover it up or band-aid it or mask it with another job, or
Mm-hmm.
I need to learn a new skill set because this is the job that's going to be there. You have no idea what's waiting for you around the corner if you just allow it
Mm-hmm.
to open. But that
Yeah.
goes back to what you're saying about the ego and how the ego is going to put on the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
think going back to what you're saying about the power of awareness, just simply being aware of the ego putting on the brakes has the power to shift it,
Yeah. Yeah.
or at
Yeah.
least
Just being
open a
aware of it.
doorway.
And I know that we've only got a few minutes left here, but the last thing I want to say, which can lead us to a follow-up, because I think we should do a follow-up with this, is and you may disagree and others may disagree, but I truly, truly believe that when we get to the core source essence of a human being, that all of us are naturally, innately creators. And I see entrepreneurship as a creative act, where the entrepreneur is a creator of value for the world. And inside of a capitalist economic model, the entrepreneur is rewarded vis-a-vis revenue and profit for the value they bring. I actually think there's no human being, when they tap into the essence of being a creator, who won't find an enormous amount of joy and fulfillment in the entrepreneurial journey. But you've got to get to the core level of yourself as a creator to find it. Because if you're unwilling to step into your power as a creator, then you won't succeed as an entrepreneur.
Oh, great setup for the next conversation. And just to put a label on what we're talking about here is the process of creating a life by your own design.
Exactly. And in this case, for our entrepreneurial program, and this is where we'll leave it, a business by design.
100%.
Which connects to your life by design. Well, September, this was fantastic as usual. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of The Most Important Conversations, and we will see you next time.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at TMICglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.